Okay, just going to be changing the hydraulic filter on the white to 135. There's the new filter, I hope. So I'm still getting a hot temperature. One of these I believe is pressure, one of them I believe is temperature. I think this one here is temperature. So I know it's hot because I check it by sticking my hand on the rear end housing and it's hot. You can only hold your hand there for a couple seconds. So originally I thought it was blowing over the relief on the compensator valve. So I adjusted that and it didn't seem to make a lot of difference. So the filter hasn't been changed since it was split last year. And this housing always heats up first, because if I put my hand on the housing, it's always quite hot before the rear end gets hot. So that might be a natural thing, but I'm going to change the filter anyways, because it hasn't been changed since it was split last year. So there's a rather large nut on the bottom of basically a pop can. It's like the Massey oil filter, cartridge type. Got a bucket right here. It's full of oil. I'm sure if you really wanted to, you could collect it because it's perfectly clean oil. But I usually just drain it into a bucket. Anyways, you get the idea. You take that big nut off. And then you pull the canister straight down. It's right here in my hand. Filter's inside. There's some springs inside. And you take this filter out. The big nuts off the bottom. New filter comes with a couple seals and a couple big gaskets. The big gaskets go up here on the ring. I probably won't bother changing them. I just changed them shortly last year before we split it. I changed the filter because the translube light came on. And when you turn to the left or right or something and the light comes on, that means it's a dirty filter. So I thought all we had was a dirty filter before we found out that the PTO / hydraulic pump shaft was snapped off at the flywheel there. So, and then of course it goes back on and you just do this big nut up on the bottom here. I'll just use a crescent wrench. I'm sure you can get the proper size wrench. It's not really that tight, so about as tight as you can get it with the crescent wrench. Closes the gap at the top there. So then we'll fire up the white and that'll fill that canister. I don't know, I don't particularly like that you change the filter and there's no oil in here, but to add oil I think would be a bit of a circus. So there's the old filter. I don't see anything majorly wrong with it. So I'm thinking that we're gonna have to take that cooler off when we're done doing the second cut. If we do any second cut. And maybe the cooler's unplugged, because it did make a difference blowing it out there the one day, and I checked it again and it's definitely not plugged now. So like the fins aren't plugged. So I don't know what the scoop is with it. It's definitely a little bit on the frustrating side. I've had this tractor for probably 5 years, and for the first couple I didn't have any hydraulic issues, and then all of a sudden I started having hot hydraulics, and then that led to everything else. And then it came back from being split and the hot hydraulic problem was gone pretty much all last fall, but then it's always cool in the fall. And then most of cutting the hay this year, it was fine, but it started happening as soon as we started baling. So here's the one pump. This is the larger pump. It's done 4 flange bolts here and a couple tube connections, and you can pull that pump straight out, swap it, but the charge pump is inside the transmission directly behind this pump, and you cannot pull it without taking the floor plate off the transmission. You got to take the cab floor off, then the floor plate off the top of the transmission housing, and then you can get to the charge pump. So anyways, we'll hopefully figure it out. There's a test port right here that's still in from when it was split, so we can put a gauge on it right here and see what type of pressure we're getting, and maybe it is that compensator valve on the side of the big pump, but that's changing the filter.